Legends, welcome back to another team review podcast. I'm your host, Joey, and joining me for this team review is none other than James Foody. Foody, how you going, mate?
Yeah, good. Thanks, mate. It's a pleasure to be here back in the swing of the footy season now, preseason coming up. You're getting me, I guess, my first introduction back into the content of this season. I haven't done much posting yet myself, so hopefully this gives me the inspiration to get back into it. But it's a pleasure to be here, mate.
Mate, it's a pleasure to have you. For those watching on YouTube, you'll notice the Foodie is rocking a fantastic Wars jersey. Now, of course, our team preview for tonight is the New Zealand Warriors. So, without further ado, let's get straight into it. Now, first thing I want to do, we're going to go through a few of the ins and outs of the Warriors team. You did a bit of research. Did you want to go through the ins and outs for us?
Look, we can go sort of through all of them, but there's a few main ones that stick out, shall we?
Yeah.
And as a Warriors, unfortunately, we've lost a few big players, most notably of which Sean Johnson. We've all sort of known that since a big way through part of last year that Sean wasn't going to be with the club this year. So it's a big test for the Warriors coming up, trying to replace someone as creative as him, as the influence he's had on the side, but especially in the key halfback position. But he's not the only one. Adam Fanua-Blake, one of probably the best front row of the last 2 years, departs. And really recently, our inspirational leader, our captain, Tohu Harris, has also retired due to an injury as well. So those are the three main ones. Recently, in other news, we just lost Zion Mayu as well, the young
good young
front
player.
rower.
Mm.
Yeah, it came out of the blue for me because we've had a lot of raps on him coming through the grades. Meant to be one of the best sort of up and coming front rowers in the league in general, and he has departed effective immediately to head over to the Bulldogs. So those are the I guess the main ones. Let me pull up the actual list of everyone that has come and gone. But yeah, it's going to be a hefty old season for the Warriors with the departures that they've got.
It is, mate. Of course, a couple of your key ins this year. The big one, James Fisher-Harris, coming over from the Penrith Panthers. I mean, a massive coup there. You lose Fanua-Blake, but getting Fisher-Harris is just as good, if not better. And then, of course, you cannot forget about Jet Cleary. Probably doesn't play this season, barring a lot of injuries, but a good fringe player there, a good experience for young Jet Cleary to learn as well. One notable loss that we didn't mention was Marcelo Montoya, who has also gone back to the Dogs as well.
Yeah, I think it's a great pickup for the Doggies, obviously starting his career there, and he was a sort of a fan favorite there. I loved him during his time at the Wars, but I like the direction that we're sort of going to go with our wingers this year, which I'm sure we'll talk about. So I think it's a great pickup for the Doggies, especially with Adokar leaving. Mate, another one that I can't believe I forgot, one of our fan favorites as well, Jazz Tavanga, also departing the club for the Manly Sea Eagles. Yes.
Yeah, look, I had some inside knowledge about Jazzy quite a few months ago. I wasn't allowed to say much because of the source it came from, but
Yep.
yes, Jazzy, unfortunately, was yeah. Look, he was a fantastic utility when you needed him. Played hooker really well, could fill in at lock. But you also get Aaron Clark, which is another really good signing who I think will play lock, but without further ado, let's talk a bit about our predicted lineups. I don't want to go too much into who we're picking before we even get into the back line first. So let's start off with our fullbacks. Now, I think we're actually going to differ straight away here in who we think should be our fullback. But what we'll do for those listening at home is we will give our best 1 to 17 if there weren't injuries. And then if there is an injury, we will tell you who we think will play round one, but who also the best 1 to 17 would be. So let's start off with the fullback position. Now, mate, who would be your fullback for round 1, 2025?
Mate, I'm in between three different options. Now, there's a few good options for this position for the Warriors. Of course, Chantical Klukstar being their incumbent fullback for the last few years. Roger Tuivasa-Sheck, the name that everybody's going to be talking about whether or not he's going to move there. And, you know, it was even the conversation of last season, whether or not he should have been there. And Tane Torpiki as well, the young fella who I thought was really, really good in his moments during the 2024 season. I'm if I had to pick a best, I'm not sure. Like I loved what Chance did for the club, and to me, I'd still happily have him at fullback. But I think he plays his best fullback when he has a structured seven in Sean Johnson, the likes
Yeah.
who can he can just sweep off the back of and tip onto that right hand side. I think he's best. He obviously makes a lot of meters, Chance. He's a very hard worker, but he's one of his most important parts of his game are his quick hands and just the ability to bat onto this outside. With this season coming up and not having a halfback in Sean Johnson, are the Warriors going to be able to score that many points, just coming off the back of his plays? I'm not sure, which sort of leads me to say maybe we do just move Roger Tuivasa-Sheck back there, and we know the sort of the stuff he can create back there. Even in his couple games that he played there last season, I thought he was incredible. And of course, as I said, Tane Tuapiki, I'd be very happy to even slot him in there just to get him in the side. So there's too many options. If I had to pick my favorite right now, I think I'll still lean towards Chance for that fullback jersey.
Yeah, look, he's the incumbent. I think he will get the spot. However, for me, it's Roger. I think you got to play Roger at fullback, and I will tell you why once we get to the centres. But I just think I think Roger with that footwork, and if he does land a co-captain position as well, I think we'll benefit from being at the back as well. Mate, let's jump into our wingers now. For me, very hard to go past Alan Watene-Zelezniak. I think we're both on the same page there. But the right wing is
Yeah.
the interesting one. Of course, Montoya gone. A few names. Of course, Edward Cozy has played there a fair bit and has done a really good job. Mate, who's your other winger?
Well, the other winger for me is actually going to be Roger Tuivasa-Sheck. I'm not playing him at fullback. I'm also going to shift him away from the centres, probably for a few reasons that we might share, but just in a different perspective here. But yeah, the thing with Roger is I think he was pretty good in the centres, but we were very right hand dominant, and he was sitting over onto the left. We just didn't use him effectively. I think on the wing or at fullback is when he can at least get those kick return carries and use his ability, his footwork, his strong running technique to make those meters. So for me, I don't want him at center this year. I thought he was fine last year. I don't think it was any of his fault. But if he's not at fullback for us this year, I want him on that wing. And I think he's a good man to fill in Marcelo Montoya's vacant wing role. I'm with you. With Dallin has to be the other winger.
Yeah, absolutely. I'll look in Ed Cozy for that spot. I think he's done enough to finally get a crack. So I'll throw him in there. Mate, let's jump into our centres now. Really interesting one here. For me, my first centre is Rocco Berry. I think I really like what I've seen of Rocco over the past few seasons. I think he's really coming into his own. I think this could be a season where he really booms and takes off. So Rocco is my first. Now, my other centre is that man you mentioned before, Charles Nickel-Klostad. And the reason I've done this is because of his defending. Now, we've seen him defend at fullback, and it's very, very good. And I think in the centres, if you throw a guy like that in that can defend, that's something that a coach needs. A coach every day of the week wants a great defender in the centres. Not saying that Roger wasn't, but I think that Chance could really add some really defensive steel in that centre position. So I'm going Rocco Berry and Chance Nickel-Klostad. What have you got for us, mate, in the centres?
Yeah, well, mate, I'm with you with Rocco Berry. He's someone who a few years ago I really didn't rate too highly. I'll be honest. I've always got to have that belief in the up and coming players. But from what I'd seen of Rocco Berry, there was something about his game that never really grabbed me. But over these last 2 seasons, he has completely exceeded my expectations. His defense is incredible. I'm pretty sure before he was injured last year, he had something like an 86% like true tackle percentage at center, which is the hardest position to defend in. He was statistically the best center in the NRL when he was on the field last year. And for me, I think that's something that we're going to really need this year. So I love the idea of Rocco Berry in the centers. I do like your idea of Chance at center as well. For me, if we do move Roger or even Tane Tuapiki to fullback, Chance has to be in the centers. And I agree that his defense will be a big part of that. But the bloke that I really, really like in this Warriors squad is Ali Leotau,
Yes.
I believe he's nephew of the great Ali Lautiti.
Yes.
And he's just a gun, man. He's such a young talent. I'd love to see him fully just lock down that spot. So those are going to be my two preferred centers heading into this season, Rocco Berry and Ali Leotau. But I have no problems if Chance ends up landing in that role as well, mate.
Yeah, for sure. Mate, let's move into the halves. Now, this is a really exciting predicted lineup because it's going to be different the whole way through. I think we're going to be pretty different until we probably get to the forward pack. But let's talk
Mm,
about these halves. Of course, Sean Johnson retires. We had Tamari Martin playing at 5'8" last year, and then Luke Metcalf came onto the scene as well.
mm,
Of course, there's Chanel Harris Tavita, and now Tanner Boyd, who has joined the club. Now, for me, my 5'8's got to be Luke Metcalf. I think you have to throw him in. I really like Metcalf. I'm a big Metcalf fan. Big Metcalf fan. I think he's a really good
mm,
young player, and he is a kid that could really lead this team. Now, halfback. A lot of people liked Tamari Martin. However, I found that when
mm.
Tamari Martin and Metcalf played, they just didn't gel together as well as I thought they would. So, and something that I thought that Tamari Martin really lacked was a good kicking game. Fantastic short kicking game, but a good kicking game, long distance, getting the Warriors out of trouble. He just lacked that. And so, in saying that, my halfback would be Tanner Boyd. He's got a very good kicking game, can kick goals as well. So for me, I would have Metcalf at 6, Boyd at 7, and that would be my halves. Mate, do you have anything different?
Mate, I sort of I couldn't agree with anything more that you said there. I
Mm,
love Tamari Martin and I love Luke Metcalf, and I thought last year through different phases of the season they were incredible. Tamari, when
yep.
Sean Johnson was out, led the team out halfback, but I think during that time we played a very different style of footy. It wasn't the way that the Warriors had played with Sean Johnson, that structured
Yep.
sort of play, that right hand side of play. We turned it all on its head. We played a bit more of an offloading like the Warriors of old, and I think that's what was the best thing for Tamari Martin's game. And it worked. We got a few good wins during that period. I'm pretty sure he actually had a positive win rate at halfback last season. But I do agree, it is a worry of mine, the lack of kicking game, if we do choose Tamari Martin and Luke Metcalf as our halves, who has that long distance kicking game. So the signing of Tanner Boyd, I absolutely loved. And for me, I think I personally would play him at halfback as well. So I'm with you that Luke Metcalf probably deserves first shot at 5'8", but I would also be starting with Tanner Boyd. I think the Warriors will probably start with Tamari Martin and Luke Metcalf
Yeah.
and give them that chance. But and unless I see something different in that kicking game, I think Tanner Boyd's kicking game can definitely give him the edge. Also, a very handy goal kicker, which is something that we're going to need with Sean Johnson out of the squad. So I'm with you, mate. Tanner Boyd at halfback and Luke Metcalf at 5'8" would be my preferred pick for the side.
Yeah, for sure. If Tanner Boyd doesn't get picked, it'll be interesting to see who goal kicks. I know
Mm.
Metcalf can goal kick, but Mitch Barnett can also goal kick. And
Mm.
I'd probably lean more towards Barnett for goal kicking just for that power behind the boot. So it'll be really interesting there to see what happens. But, mate, let's move into the front row. I think the front row picks itself. Of course,
Yeah.
your new recruit, James Fisher Harris, he'll line up there, no doubt. I don't think anyone's taken his spot. That's why he's come to the club to bring that
Yeah.
experience and to be the starting man. And of course, Mitch Barnett on the other side as well. And then my hooker is Wade Egan. Mate, do you have anything different to that?
No, there's not really much different you can say there. I think Mitch Barnett proved last year that he was actually one of the premier front rowers in the competition. I know he got shuffled out to second row a few times through injury and whatnot. For me, I want Mitch Barnett and I want James Fisher Harris just locking down that middle. And to be honest, mate, if I was any other team, it's one of the scariest front row pairings to run into. So I'm with you there. And Wade Egan at hooker, I mean, it speaks for itself. I think those three are absolute locks for those positions, mate.
Absolutely, mate. Let's jump into the back row now. For me, it's got to be Kurt Capewell. I think he's done
Mm.
enough to keep his spot there. The other one is interesting. You've obviously got a few second rows we could put in. You got Miranda Niokore, and of course Jackson Ford as well, and some young guys coming through.
Mm.
I know Ford had a bit of a niggling injury, but I'm actually leaning towards Ford starting. A lot of people leaning towards Niokore, but what I like about
Mm.
Niokore on the bench is that he can also play through the middle. So I would keep him on the bench. I'm going to
Yeah.
start with Jackson Ford and Kurt Capewell for me.
I am sort of in the same boat. Like Kurt Capewell speaks for himself. He'll be there. Really happy to have him in that position. Jackson Ford in 2023 in that fantastic Warriors season, I loved him. Like he had a
Yeah.
few errors, but he played hard. He played 80 minutes, and he was just always through in it. Last year, I was a bit more disappointed in Jackson Ford. I think there's too many silly, like simple errors and penalties in his game. And at different stages, we used him at front row, we used him off the bench, lock, bit of everything. I think if he has had a great season, like great preseason, and he's ironed those errors and penalties out of his game, I'm also happy to sit him at second row because I think at his best, he's a fantastic second rower. And just 80 minutes week in, week out. I love that. And I also agree, it's also for the same reasons of Marata Niokore. I think his impact off the bench is so much more impactful if we can use him off the bench. I'm happy to have him as a starting second rower, but he's not an 80-minute second rower. You're going to have to replace him at some point. Well, I just prefer to lock in Capewell and Ford and let Murata come in wherever you can through the middle on the edge and just let him run a mark. So I like the idea of Ford and Capewell as the second rowers, mate.
Yeah, absolutely. And then we'll finish off with the lock position before we jump into the bench. But the lock position is an interesting one
Mm,
because, of course, no Tohu Harris now, as you said, medically retired. There's a few candidates for that role. Of course, Aaron Clark comes to the club now, who we know can play lock and can fill in that hooking role as well. Or Dylan Walker, who I thought was really, really good
mm.
when he played lock last season. Mate, for me, I'm leaning towards more Aaron Clark. I think he may get the first crack at lock, maybe with Walker on the bench. But anything different for you?
No, I'm actually in the same mold. I'm not sure who we will give the first crack to. Maybe Dylan Walker, quote unquote, deserves it. Like he did fill in admirably last year. I think there was a few too many defensive issues for me who was watching closely, but what he brings in attack is fantastic. But I think his value is as that bench player. He can still play the majority of the game coming off the bench, but I don't want him to do the first 20 minutes of hard just yakka. I want him to come in and tear him apart. So I'm also happy to play Aaron Clark as our lock forward now that Torhu's retired and we need to put someone there. So I'm with you there. I want to put Aaron Clark there and let sort of Dylan Walker run a mark off the bench as well.
Yeah, absolutely. And let's jump into that bench makeup. Now, the
Mm,
bench makeup is going to be a little bit different because obviously you can play Walker as your second hooker, or you could play a Chanel Harris Tavita.
mm,
You could even play a Freddie Lussick. You've got a few younger hookers there at the club. Even Tanner Boyd, if he doesn't get the half
mm.
role, could play 14 as well. But for me, I'm leaning towards a bench of uh, Dylan Walker, Tom
Hmm.
Ale, Miranda Niokore, and then Bunty Afoa. I think for me, it gives you
Okay.
two big front rowers. It gives you a second rower who can play in the middle, and then your utility player in Dylan Walker. So that would be how my bench mold would be made up. Mate, have you got anything different?
I do have it a little bit different. I am probably the biggest Bundy fan in the world, but at some point last season, it just seemed like not so much they lost faith in him because he was dropped back and made captain of our reserve grade team and he was fantastic there. But I don't know why he wasn't being selected. We started selecting a few more younger guys over Bunty. So
Yeah.
for me, I'd have him on the bench every day of the week. I love Bunty Afoa. If I had to guess the way that the Warriors go, I think they're going to bring in young Dimitrik. He changed his surname. I think it's Vimalga now. I think he was Sifakula before that. I think he gets a spot on the bench, and I think Marata Niokore, who'd we say, Dylan Walker also gets spots, and then Tom Harley maybe gets that other one. But there's plenty of options there with who can and might miss it in the lineups we had with Luke Metcalf and Tanner Boyd in the halves. Maybe tomorrow Martin snags a bench spot. So there's a lot
Yeah.
of options. The one thing that the Warriors aren't lacking this year is depth. So we have to it's sort of just throw a dart at the wall and see where it hits to see who their bench is going to be, mate.
Mate, it would be a fantastic if Jet Cleary made an appearance. I'd love to
Mm.
see Jet Cleary against Penrith, but I don't think it's going to happen. But you definitely,
No.
as you said, the Warriors have a lot of depth there, and it's great to see, mate. Let's jump
Mm.
into some, of course, NRL fantasy, which we both play and we love so much, and Supercoach as well. But we'll talk fantasy tonight. Now, we want to
Mm.
give a few fantasy relevant players for people who may be listening at home or watching on YouTube. So I'm quickly going to jump into some players, and I want you to tell me if you're thinking about them in your team, if you're not, and yeah, and we'll go from there. I'm going to use a super coach prices and Supercoach stats. So it may not be as
Yep.
similar as NRL fantasy, but I will do my best to keep it somewhat similar. But just let me get it up here. But the first player I'm looking at, and I think who a lot of people have been thinking of, is Aaron Clark. He's about 400k.
Mm-hmm.
He does have that mid position that you can play him in. I just want to check if he is dual. I don't think he is yet in Supercoach.
I think he is dual in Supercoach. I
He
think
is?
he is.
Okay. I'll just have a quick look and we will go from there. So if we head down here, we've got Aaron Clark. Oh, sorry, he is. Yes, second row and front row dual, which is fantastic. 391k.
Mm-hmm.
Mate, thoughts on Aaron Clark if he gets a starting spot?
Yeah, mate, if he gets a starting spot, he's currently in my side. It's a little bit of an awkward one. I think a lot of people
Yeah.
sort of see that the number, his price tag starts with 3, and they just think that he's a 300k player, and it's nice. He is much closer to the 400k mark. And if his
Yeah.
number started with a 4, are people a bit more like, I don't know. So it's a little bit of an awkward price, but if he gets the starting lock role, he could be playing 50, 55, 60 minutes, between lock, edge, middle, hooker, who knows? He can play anywhere. And I think he'll get through enough work to definitely at least increase that price tag. And he could even be a playable player for the 17 through the opening few rounds. So he's in my team at the moment. I'm very much interested in Aaron Clark.
Yeah, he's in mine too. Mate, if you're looking at a premium option, another dual position player, second row and front row, Mitch Barnett, 661k. Probably for me at the moment, there's a lot more cheaper options you can go to start with. He's definitely one for the run home. The Warriors have a pretty good buy schedule from about I think it was round 14 home. It's not too bad. I think there's one or two buys in there, but the schedule is not too bad at all. Barnett probably does play Origin, so he's probably one to get after that Origin period. Mate, thoughts on Mitchy Barnett?
Yeah, he's an interesting one. When we mentioned goal kicking earlier, if he somehow snags that goal kicking for the Warriors,
Juicy.
I'm having him. He might be my first player picked. I loved him when he was kicking goals for the Knights during that little run. He was one of my favorites. But he, as you said, he is at a very premium price, and I don't think you'd do wrong with picking him. But
Yeah.
during the early parts of the season, I'm looking for a little bit more value. I think he scored a lot of his tries when he was moved to edge last year as well, when that bumped his price up. I think he was great at front row from a footy perspective, but I think Supercoach and probably fantasy wise, he was scoring a little bit lower when he was at front row. So for me, I'm not going to go in, but I'm not going to say he's a bad option to have. He's still one of the better front rowers, and I'm pretty sure he's still dual as well. So he's got that handy for him, but not for me to start the season, mate.
Yeah, absolutely. Mate, the new recruit, James Fisher Harris, front row, of course,
Mm.
549k. It's a really, really good price for someone who comes over as such a premium talent. Hasn't his scores have never really translated that well in Supercoach or fantasy, but
Mm.
he's coming off one of his best seasons, try scoring seasons, especially for Penrith last season. Can he emulate those heights at the Warriors remains to be seen. But mate, a lot of people high on him at the moment. What do you think about Fish?
Yeah, he's a weird one, Fish. As you said, he's coming off probably his best season, in my opinion, or one of his best seasons at the Penrith Panthers. Are his minutes going to increase that much? Like maybe a few, but I don't know how much that's going to increase in output. He's not an Aden Fanua Blake type player, and that's perfectly fine. What he brings is very valuable in its own right, but he's not going to be scoring the tries that Aden Fanua Blake's going to be doing. I don't think the Warriors will be playing that style of football without Sean Johnson in the first place. So maybe there's a tiny bit of value, but there are players around a similar price to him that I'm a little bit more keen on, such as Atino Faisal Malaawi. So for me, he's a no-go for me, but again, I can see why you think he might go a little bit better this season.
Absolutely, mate. One that is a really good cash cow, and if lands this starting spot, I think he's going to be in everyone's team. Tanner Boyd,
Mm.
dual position, 5'8" and halfback, 329k. Mate, if he gets that starting 7 spot and he's kicking goals, he's straight in for me.
What was his duel? Was it hooker and halfback or halfback 5'8"?
No, it's 5'8" halfback.
Ah,
Yeah.
okay. Yeah, so I owned him a couple seasons ago when he was at the Titans and he got that starting role back from Toby Sexton, and he
Yeah.
was hooker dual then, and I loved him. I was just he kicks goals like sure maybe attacking stats aren't going to come that often. His base is tiny, but a goal kicker you're always going to get 40 to 50 points, and that's enough to improve price if he does start, especially with even a 5'8" halfback duel is pretty important in Supercoach as well.
Yeah.
I'm very much happy to start him, especially since the 5'8" role in Supercoach, especially this season, looks really hard to pick. Like it's sort of just
Mm.
grab a premium and ignore your second position. So if he comes out of the gates and he gets that halfback jersey for the Warriors, I 100% will be starting with him.
Yeah, absolutely, mate. One that is another cheap option who may land a bench spot we spoke about before, Tom Ale. Front
Mm.
row, 245K. Any interest there?
I'm not sure there's too much interest in Tom. I really like him as a player, but the Warriors seem very hesitant to give him more than 30 minutes max a game. Like he seems to sort of
Yeah.
do really good in his 20 to 25 off the bench, but I don't think the minutes are going to increase too much. I assume James Fisher Harris picks up a few minutes himself this season. Mitch Barnett, we know he's a really big minute middle forward, and I think even then there are going to be stages that we're going to have Aaron Clark and Dylan Walker on the field at the same time. Well, one of them playing a prop sort of role. So I don't know how many minutes Tom Ale gets. If he comes out in the first couple rounds, that's the beauty of Supercoach. No rises happen till round three. If he comes out those first two rounds and he's playing bigger minutes and he's looking the goods, I'm happy to eat my words and jump on him then. But for now, I'm going to avoid Tom Ale, mate.
Yeah, me too, mate. Let's jump back up to a premium price player, Roger Tuivasa-Sheck. Now,
Mm.
he is a centre wing in Supercoach currently at the moment. If he does land the fullback spot, it will only take 6 weeks to get dual if he keeps that spot there. So we could see a centre wing fullback dual, which would be very, very handy to have in Supercoach. 553K. I think my question to you, mate, is if he lands that fullback spot, do you wait a few weeks? What do you do? Do you jump on? Are you keen on him?
At at his price point at 542K, I think you said it was. If he lands fullback or wing, I'm all over him. At the moment,
Yeah,
I have him in my side thinking he's a winger. But if he gets fullback and at the moment he's center wing, obviously he'll get that dual. Whether or not you use him as a fullback with all the other premium options is a different story, but it's still a handy dual to have. But if he starts at fullback for the Warriors and you can have him in your center wing at 540K when we know what he can do at fullback, 100% he's in my side. And even for myself, as I said, I predict he's going to land on the wing. I'm happy to have him in my side as a winger at that price point as well. I think he'll score a few more tries. He'll get through more work with those kick returns. I'm all over Roger Tuivasa-Sheck, to be honest.
yeah, for sure, mate. Made a couple for the Black Book, of course. Jacob Laban, second
Mm.
row, 232K, is named in the trials this week to start at second row. Do we think he's going to jag a second row spot? Do we think he plays much this season? Is he good to have?
Yeah, he's an interesting one. Like, I don't think Jackson Ford. I've got the team list here. No, Jackson Ford wasn't named in our round one in our trial one team list. So I don't know if there's an injury or whatnot going on there with Jackson. But the big thing for Jacob Laban is he was named starting second rower ahead of Marata Niokore, who was
Yeah,
named on the bench. Of course, it's trial, so all players are sort of probably going to play similar minutes. You just trial through a few things, but to me, it's pretty telling if you are named in that starting spot, and he was named there. He's a supreme talent coming through the grades. I think, strangely enough, last year, I don't want to say it hindered his development, but he didn't burst onto the scene as much as I thought he would. But I still have a lot of faith in Jacob Laban. And as you said, for the Black Books, if he ends up getting the starting second row to start the season or, midway through the season, he's definitely one to keep an eye on because he's a supreme talent, mate, and I'm really high on him.
he is, mate. At 232K, his break even is going to
Mm.
be in the minuses. I mean, he's going to
Yeah.
make you cash either way. So if he starts, definitely. Mate, probably the last one I want to finish off with Wade Egan. Now, I can play him in hooker, of course. Uh,
Mm.
I would say premium option, but he's sitting at a really, really nice price. 491K
Yeah.
is injury prone. And I think that's what turns a lot of people off Wade Egan is the injury prone factor to his game. Look, has the number 9 locked down, probably play, 65 to 70 minutes per game, obviously barring injury. And I don't really think anyone's going to take his spot at hooker. Obviously, you can play Clark there, you can play Walker there, but I think Walker's going to more fill in at a lock role or a second row role. Mate, any value there in Wade Egan?
Mate, I'm really glad you brought him up, because at that price point, sub 500K, I do have a bit of interest. He's not in my side at the moment, but he's definitely one that I'm monitoring. I think if we don't pick someone like, if Freddie Lussick gets named on the bench, I'm going to avoid him. But if we go the 4 forward bench, yes, it may be Aaron Clark or Dylan Walker who can fill in there. I still think he probably plays, 65, 70 to maybe even 80 minutes a game. And during the early parts of last season, I thought he was amazing. His price definitely came a bit more down towards the end of the season when he had those head knocks. And as you said, he is a bit injury prone. He can find his way to the HIA bin. But if he can stay healthy, if we don't name a Freddie Lussick or even young Sam Healy from the young hooker from Cronulla that we signed, who I'm a big fan of, if they don't make the bench at his price point, I do have a little bit of interest in Wade Egan, and he's one that not a lot of people are going to be looking at. So if you can jag him early in the season or even to start and he goes off, he's a very good pod play to have.
Absolutely. And of course, that is it for our Supercoach chat. You can still join our Supercoach comp. It's running until the season ends. You can start late if you miss it. But if you want to join the Ruck Pod Supercoach comp with prizes up for grabs, use the code 215716. I know Foody's in there already. I'm ready to go. It's going to be a big year. If you do want to join our fantasy comp, use the code PCDNXS7S. And if you're feeling like a little cheeky draft, we do have a draft comp running as well for NRL Fantasy. And the code for draft is 4DD9F99V. I'll throw all those links in our description as well, all those codes, in the description on the YouTube channel and on Spotify. So they will be some great little comps to get into. There will be prizes up for grabs, so stay tuned. All right, mate, we're going to jump into a Dynamite now, a player that we think will explode in 2025. It can be a current player. It could be someone who you think's coming through that may make a first-grade appearance. Mate, do you want to start off with a Dynamite for 2025?
Yeah, I've got a few, but I'm going to have to start with Ali Leotau, the center that, as I said, he sort of burst on the scene 2 years ago now. I thought he had a fantastic debut. Got his opportunities last year, injured here and there. If he can put together a full season and lock up that center jersey that I predict he will have, he's such a gunman. I think he'll be one of the better centers in our comp for a long, long time to come if he can stay healthy. Warriors haven't had a great track record with keeping these Dynamite centers, in the best of shape with Conrad Hurrell. So, man, that I wanted to quickly mention, well, I mentioned him briefly before, young Sam Healy, little hooker that was not little at all in the terms of his posture, but we signed him from the Cronulla Sharks. He looks like an absolute gun. If Wade Egan is to go down with a few head knocks, I'd be very tempted to bring Healy straight into our starting side. I think he's a little bit older, maybe 21, 22. So he's not rookie, 18 years old. He's someone I'm really excited about. So if he gets a shot this year, look out for Sam Healy.
And of course, is he related to former Cronulla hooker Mitch Healy? I think Mitch Healy may be his dad.
I think he is. Yeah, let me double check that.
Yeah, so Mitch Healy, of course, played for the Sharks between 89 and 2000, 222 games. Fantastic player for Cronulla. Was a little 5'8" there. I'm not 100% sure if they are related, but he did play at Cronulla, so it makes sense to me that he may be. But, mate, some good shouts there. If I'm looking at a Dynamite for 2025, I know it sounds a bit cliche, but I'm looking in the front row. I know Mitch Barnett had such a good year, but I think he's going to go to even bigger heights. I think he's going to be around that leadership team. Could even be named captain. We still don't know yet. If not even a co-captain spot. He is named captain this week in the trials. I just can see Mitch Barnett just going to heights that even he can't expect. And I think that's something that we saw it last year. He made his Origin debut, and he was fantastic. He was the perfect Origin player that New South Wales needed, and he just fits that mold so well. So Mitch Barnett is my Dynamite for 2025. I also have a little cheeky Dynamite in Tanner Boyd. If Tanner Boyd gets a crack, at the number 7 jersey, I think he could hold that for a very, very long time. So there's a
Yeah.
couple of dynamites there. Of course, yours in Ali Leitao and Sam Healy. So some fantastic shouts there. But that is all we've got time for our preview tonight. Just before we go, mate, do you want to give a plug to Chip and Chase podcast?
Oh, very happy to. There's not a whole lot going on at the moment, but we're in the process of a big move at the moment. So content has been a little bit slow, and when I say slow, it means I haven't posted anything in 2025 yet. But I've been working hard behind the scenes, getting the new studio set up. It's looking for really good things heading into the season, and over the next probably 4 or 5 days, we will have some content starting to stream through. That's over on the Chip and Chase Instagram account. And of course, we will be doing the podcast, hoping to do 2 or 3 podcasts a week throughout the entire NRL season. And that's available on Spotify, Apple Music, Apple Podcasts, I should say, and on YouTube. So all under the Chip and Chase podcast. Go give us a follow on all of those socials. And yeah, feel free to swing DMs, or we'll be hosting some Supercoach leagues and whatnot. Join into them when they're up and running. But yeah, that's we've got the content coming up, so just bear with us.
Some fantastic stuff. I have featured on an episode or 2 last year, and mate, you're a fantastic guy. So the Chip and Chase podcast, check them out on all social media and at Spotify as well. And of course, the Ruck Infringement Podcast. Don't forget to check us out on Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, and X. And of course, Spotify and Apple Podcasts and YouTube now as well. We'd love if you could head over to our YouTube, like, subscribe, give us a follow. We love comments as well. Leave your comments. Also in Spotify, drop your comments in about any episode that you've listened to. And just before we go, don't forget to check out our great friends at JerseyKingz Australia. Go to JerseyKingzAustralia.com. Check out their amazing range of jerseys. There's NRL, AFL, basketball, soccer as well. Lots of a different range of sports. Fantastic jerseys, great quality, fantastic price. And if you use the code RUCK, you get $50 off your order. So if they're selling jerseys for $150, you're going to get a jersey for $100. That's an absolute steal, if you ask me, an absolute bargain. So head on over to JerseyKingzAustralia.com. Check them out now. Until next time, I'm Joey. That's Foody. Be good.